UFC 284 betting and DraftKings show. We have 13 fights this Saturday night. I'm Jon Kelly. Let's hear the picks. Kicking things off in the lightweight division, we have Zubaira Tukugav coming in as a minus 500 favorite. The comeback on UFC debutant fighter Elvis Brenner is plus 400. And we'll start with the Tukugav side. He's coming off about a year and a half layoff, and we know historically he has always struggled to make that 145 weight cut. So now he's moving up a division. He's fighting at 155 here. He actually pulled out of one of his recent fights due to a botched weight cut. So it's not a secret with him. And that's really the clear weakness, is because of the weight cut, his cardio is just not good. So as fights get extended, he certainly starts to slow down. But the positive note is that he is a technical kickboxer. He is a good control grappler, averages around 2.5 takedowns per 15 minutes. It is just the fact that he is unable to keep that pace, so things get kind of dicey in those fights that do reach the third round. Now, I'm not sure if Brenner is the type of fighter that can take advantage of that. He's basically a one-dimensional submission grappler fighting out of Brazil. 11 of his 13 wins have come by submission. I don't expect him to have much grappling success here. I expect Tukugav to be the better striker as well. He just has a much better skill set than this guy. I think it's too much too soon. I think Tukugav gets his hand raised here. I don't necessarily trust him as a massive favorite. And in terms of DraftKings, he's more of a decision fighter. And I don't really trust him on DraftKings. At that price, he probably needs a finish or multiple takedowns, tons of control time. And while that's possible, I'm just not sure how likely it is, especially moving up to 155 pounds. That just adds a little bit of volatility as well. So Tukugav by decision, that's the official pick. Which brings us to our next matchup in the featherweight division. We have Shane Young coming off nearly a 2-year layoff. He's a minus 135 favorite. The comeback on UFC debutant fighter Blake Bilder is plus 115. And we'll start on the Shane Young side. I mentioned the 2-year layoff. He is still only 29 years old. He's a solid striker. He's willing to push a high pace on the feet. He does throw in volume, and 10 of his 13 wins have come inside the distance. Now, on the flip side, Blake Bilder is a very aggressive style of fighter, typically more so in the grappling realm. He does have some power on the feet, but he is a little bit reckless. The problem with him in the striking exchanges is I think he's not very durable at all, and I really favor the durability of Young here, despite Young having been knocked out as well. I just think Blake Bilder could be dropped. He could be rocked pretty easily. I think he needs to turn this into a grappling match, and that's where he could have success. Shane Young only defends takedowns at 56% in the UFC. If Bilder's able to secure dominant position, then I do expect him to be able to potentially threaten with a submission. But honestly, I just really think they bang it out on the feet for the most part, and that's why I keep going back to the Shane Young side. But at the end of the day, both of these guys are hittable. Both of them, I think, have finishing ability. So this is a fight for DraftKings that I want to target both sides, but the official pick is going to be Young by TKO. Next fight up, Loma Lukeboommee comes in as a minus 265 favorite. The comeback on Elise Reed is plus 225. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this one because I really don't have much interest in terms of the betting market or on DraftKings. I do expect Lukeboommee to get her hand raised here. I think she's the better fighter in just about every area. She comes from a high-level striking background. She throws much more volume than Elise Reed. She's gonna bully her in the clinch. She mixes in those judo sweeps and trips as well. Like, I just think she can win this fight basically wherever it goes. Now, I don't think it's a blowout, so that's why I'm not laying the chalk here on Lukeboommee. You know, maybe Elise Reed scrapes together enough points to win a round, but I just think worst case scenario, this plays out like the Sam Hughes fight. I think Elise Reed doesn't have really any grappling upside, and on the feet, I just think she's going to be out-volumed and at a power disadvantage as well. I just think Lukeboommee's going to be the much more active of the two, the one scoring points and securing rounds. So Lukeboommee by decision, that's the official pick, but this is another one where I'm really kind of shying away from the big favorite on DraftKings because I think at that price, she's just not going to be able to do enough to have any type of ceiling. Next up on the card, we have another featherweight matchup between former Dana White Contender Series contract winner Jack Jenkins, a minus 335 favorite. The comeback on Don Sheinus is plus 275. And Jack Jenkins is a guy who he won a contract on week 10 last season of Contender Series. I was honestly really impressed with him coming into Contender Series, and I felt like he was one of the prospects that sort of underwhelmed in terms of his performance on Contender Series. He did get the win, he did get a third round stoppage, but I honestly thought he could have basically got a stoppage much sooner. I thought he came in with kind of an odd game plan. He's not really known for his wrestling. He's actually been out-grappled, out-wrestled in the past on the regional scene. And in this fight, he really didn't show much of his striking ability. And that's really what I was excited about, is he is a good technical striker. He has really sharp leg kicks, and I expect that to play a factor here in his debut. But he went to the wrestling nonstop against the guy on Contender Series who basically was just inviting the takedown. So I felt like it was kind of an underwhelming performance, I guess, in a sense, for Jack Jenkins. I do still think he's a decent striker. I think he could be taken down and out-grappled by people with a competent ground game. So it's not like I'm respecting him as much as the rest of the market seems to, but I just think this is a tailor-made matchup for him against Don Sheinus, who I doubt is going to be able to have any sort of wrestling success here. He has wrestled a little bit on the regional scene, but Jenkins, I think, is going to be able to stuff those takedown attempts, and I think on the feet, it's going to be a clear advantage on the Jenkins side. So Jenkins by TKO, that's the official pick. And up next, we have Jamie Malarkey, a minus 250 favorite. The comeback on Francisco Prado is plus 210. And this is one of my favorite fights to target on DraftKings because I think we see a finish at a very high clip here. I think regardless of who wins, I think they're going to score very well. Now, obviously, I favor the Jamie Malarkey side here. We'll start with Prado, though, because basically you just have to worry about him bombing on you early. He's an 11-0 prospect, just 20 years old, making his UFC debut, and he has 8 first-round knockout victories. Now, the level of competition was extremely low. He actually has a win over the infamous Jay Ellis, who is notorious for being fed to prospects on the regional scene to get finished. So the level of competition has been very poor. But it doesn't take away from the fact that he is very explosive, very aggressive, and he seems to have an okay striking skill set. He's not really smart with his striking attacks, like very reckless, doesn't really play defense either. But if he is able to land, he does have power. Now, that's the one thing I'll say is Jamie Malarkey is super hittable, and we've seen him knocked out 3 times in his career, but typically he's able to take a beating before getting knocked out. So I'm assuming he's going to be able to basically just stay alive in the first couple minutes. And then I think we really see Malarkey start to take over, especially if he implements the grappling like I expect him to. He's a guy that mixes in a couple takedowns per 15 minutes. So I expect Malarkey to hopefully not die early, and assuming he doesn't, I really think he can grind on this dude and get a finish of his own. So we're going Malarkey by TKO. That's the official pick, but I'm looking to be overweight to both sides on DraftKings. Up next, we have Clayton Rodriguez, a minus 320 favorite with Shannon Ross on the comeback at plus 265. And this is another former Dana White Contender Series matchup on both sides. Clayton Rodriguez made his UFC debut against CJ Vergara, and honestly didn't look great in that spot. He ended up losing a split decision where Vergara was able to just take over late, and Rodriguez definitely faded down the stretch. Now, this matchup, I think it's a bounce back spot for Clayton Rodriguez. He's a guy that I thought would be decent in terms of the lower levels of this division. Didn't really prove that in his debut, but I think he proves it here against Shannon Ross, who basically is a local guy. He did earn a contract on Contender Series despite losing. He got knocked out in that fight. It was a banger matchup, but he was dropped multiple times. He was knocked out as well. We've seen him knocked out multiple times in his career. This dude is just like a glorified regional grinder. I'm not quite sure why he's getting a shot here, but he does have the home crowd, and he is a little bit powerful as well. So Clayton Rodriguez can't completely disregard him. I think this is going to be a banger for as long as it lasts. I actually bet the under 2.5 at minus 110. I do think we see a finish here. I think it comes from the Clayton Rodriguez side. I just don't trust the chin of Shannon Ross and the style that he fights with. I think it's going to be a problem here. So Clayton Rodriguez by TKO, that's the official pick. Next fight up, we have Josh Calibow, minus 120 favorite with my guy Melsik Bagdasarian on the comeback at plus 100. And I am going to have some sort of action on my guy Melsik. No surprise here. I tweeted out a clip of him training against a tree earlier in the week. But in all seriousness, I do favor him in this matchup. When you look at a guy like Melsik Bagdasarian, what does he have? He has that high-level striking. He's very powerful on the feet with his kicks. Obviously has the power in the hands as well. Most of his wins have come by knockout. The one knock on him is the cardio, right? Like, he used to train with Ronda Rousey, Edmund Shabazian. Like, those people typically are front runners counters, can't go a full hard 15 minutes without fading. But we have seen him go to decision and win a decision despite slowing down a little bit. And it's not like Josh Calibow is this great cardio warrior. We've seen him slow down in fights as well. And the way I want to target Melsik, the way I want to fade Melsik is with guys that have good cardio and guys that are going to mix in the grappling. And Josh Calibow, I do not expect him to do either of those things. He's never landed a takedown in the UFC. And again, I don't think the cardio is really going to be this massive advantage for him. So now you're gonna go toe to toe with a really good striker like Melsik Bagdasarian, a guy who's better than you at striking and is more powerful than you as well. I'm not saying that Calibow doesn't have power in his own right, but I would be kind of surprised to see him convincingly win rounds here against a high-level striker like Melsik, who I expect to be doing more, landing the heavier shots and winning rounds. So give me Melsik by decision. That's the official pick. And this is one for DraftKings. They're both priced in the mid-range. This is one of those key decision points where it could really dictate the slate. If we see ownership as we get later in the week, if we see ownership kind of, start to really focus on one side of this matchup, I'm almost just blindly going to be overweight on the other side. We'll see how it shakes out, but I'm hoping, and I think Calibow is going to be the more popular of the two, which is just going to make me want even more exposure to Bagdasarian. Next up in the light heavyweight division, Tyson Pedro comes in as a minus 240 favorite. The comeback on Modestas Bukauskas is plus 200. And this is one where I've never really been a Tyson Pedro guy, and I'm certainly not. I'm not backing him here. But I'm also not betting on the underdog in Bukauskas, who was formerly cut by the UFC, went 1-3 across his 4 bouts. Now he's back. He obviously had that brutal leg injury against Khalil Roundtree. Now he has a second chance to prove his worth. So I do like that angle, that he might be a little bit more hungry than a guy like Tyson Pedro, who's basically gotten the cupcake of all cupcake matchups since returning from his 3-year layoff. He knocked out Ike Villanueva and he knocked out Harry Hunsucker. Those are two of the lowest level guys at the heavyweight division. I know that Hunsucker fight, he did drop down to light heavyweight for that, but honestly, I still wasn't super impressed with Pedro, like especially in the Villanueva fight, like very timid, slow starter, did end up finishing him with the leg kicks, but I feel like he just needs to be much more aggressive. He's a slow starter, doesn't throw in volume, so if he's not going to get that first round finish, if we can't bank on that, I don't think he pays off his price tag. And on the flip side, Bukauskas, I'm just not super impressed with. Like he's basically big moment reliant. Like he's not going to win rounds convincingly at a high clip here. He's kind of a slow starter as well. Doesn't put a ton of volume out there. Doesn't look to grapple. Most of his wins have come by knockout. I'd be kind of surprised if he knocked out Pedro here. So this is one where I think it kind of goes over, and I think we might even see this one cruise to a decision or like a late second round, third round finish on either side. So my plan is to be underweight to the Tyson Pedro side, because basically he has to get a finish in the first round in my eyes in order to pay off that salary. And I'd be surprised if he did that here. So I'm just naturally going to look to be overweight to the underdog in this matchup on Bukauskas. Even though I think he loses, I think I just want a little bit of leverage there in getting overweight, and then maybe he pulls off the upset. So the official pick is going to be Pedro by TKO, but in terms of DraftKings, I'm going to flip it and have more Bukauskas in my lineups this weekend. Up next, we have another light heavyweight matchup between Jimmy Crute, a minus 190 favorite, with Alonzo Menifield on the comeback at plus 160. And this is another great fight to target on DraftKings, because you look at the way both of these guys fight, I think it really dictates a finish one way or the other. Menifield, obvious. I mean, take one look at the dude's picture, like massive, massive power. I know I've kind of talked bad about him in the past, but that's really just a fight IQ thing. It's not really a skill set thing, and I'm definitely not knocking the power, because it's very clear that when he does let his hands go, he has some real power. On the flip side, Jimmy Crute is a guy that I've always been a little bit higher on than the market. He did burn us once or twice in the past, but I do think this is a pretty decent matchup for him, as long as he's able to avoid the heavy shots from Menifield here. Now, the positive note is he's going to have a clear grappling advantage if he can get this fight to the ground. I'm not convinced that that will be easy, as Menifield has typically shown pretty solid takedown defense, but where it is a positive on the Crute side is the fight IQ. Like I mentioned, Menifield a lot of times invites his opponents into the clinch. He lets them hold him up against the fence. If he does that here, I think it's only a matter of time before Crute's able to wear on him and ragdoll him to the mat here. So we're going on the Crute side. It's not a super confident lean for me. So again, this is another one that where I kind of want to hedge my exposure in terms of DraftKings. I know I've said that a few times for this card, but it's really just one of those cards where I'm really just focusing on the 3 or 4 fights that I think are going to score well and target both sides and hopefully have the right combination by the time we get towards the main card. The official pick is going to be Jimmy Crute by submission. Next fight up, this one is in the heavyweight division. Justin Tafa comes in as a small favorite at -125. The comeback on Parker Porter is +105. And this is one where I think it's a decent matchup for Justin Tafa. I know Parker Porter, prior to the first round submission loss in his last fight to Jelton Almeida, did put together a nice little win streak here. He does keep a high pace for the heavyweight division, but he's basically just a striker. You know, he can mix in a takedown here and there, but I wouldn't favor him to have much grappling success in most matchups. And I'd be kind of surprised if he did here as well. Whereas Justin Tafa, yes, he's a one-dimensional striker as well, but I think he's much more technical on the feet. He comes from a pure boxing background. I expect him to have the better boxing combinations, and I think he's the more powerful fighter as well. And I trust his durability just a little bit more than Parker Porter, who's been finished in 6 of his 7 professional losses. So give me Justin Tafa by knockout. That's the official pick. And up next, we have Jack Della Maddalena coming in as a -325 favorite with the comeback on Randy Brown at +265. And I'm not like a huge Jack Della Maddalena guy. You want to talk about a guy who came into the UFC and has delivered every step of the way so far. That's Jack Della Maddalena. 3 straight first-round victories since he made his debut coming off Dana White's Contender Series, all inside the first round, and this is a really good matchup for him. Now, I'm not the biggest Maddalena guy, but he has looked sharp, and I don't think this is the matchup where I want to look to fade him, because I want to fade him with somebody that I expect to be very durable and to be able to implement the grappling, because that's where I still have some questions that I would like to be answered on the Jack Della side, where I think he could be taken down. I think he could potentially be out-grappled, as we saw on the regional scene. Even Angel Luis had him in a tight head and arm triangle choke that he did fight out of and survive and ended up winning. But I just don't think Randy Brown's going to be that guy. You know, he averages less than 1 takedown per 15 minutes. And in the striking exchanges, he's not a bad striker himself. He's pretty technical, does have a little bit of power, but I just think he's fragile. Like, he just does not react well to getting hit. And a guy like Maddalena is just eventually going to be too much. He's going to swarm him. He's going to start piecing him up. He rips the body well. I just think it's only a matter of time before he overwhelms Randy Brown and gets him out of there. So Maddalena by knockout. That's the official pick. Which brings us to our co-main event, as Yair Rodriguez comes in as a -165 favorite. The comeback on Josh Emmett is +145. And I like the Yair Rodriguez side here. I just think this is a fun matchup. Both guys, powerful strikers. It's really the big right hand of Josh Emmett versus the flashy kickboxing style of Yair Rodriguez. I just think more times than not at this stage in their career that Rodriguez is going to be the one getting the better of Josh Emmett. I trust his durability a little bit more. And really at this stage in his career, Josh Emmett turns 38 next month. Like, his body is really starting to wear down. In my opinion, this is a guy that's notoriously known for having knee issues, shoulder issues. He's had multiple rough injuries over the years, and there's been some speculation that he's actually coming into this one a little bit banged up as well. So I'm just not convinced that Josh Emmett has one more war in him. I know he's super tough. I mean, he's fought through ACL tears, whatever. But I just think in this matchup, I think Yair's going to get the better of him across 5 rounds. I think he gets a stoppage at some point. Yair Rodriguez by TKO. That's the official pick. Which brings us to the main event, as Islam Makhachev comes in as a -380 favorite. The comeback on Alexander Volkanovski is +310. And Volkanovski's looking to do the unthinkable. Move up to 155, become the double champ. The problem is not many people actually think that he's capable of doing so, and I'm one of those people as well. I don't really, when they announced this fight, I really wasn't even all that interested in it, because I think there's better fights at 155. Give my guy Beneil Dariush a shot at the title, as opposed to letting Volkanovski come in here and sort of waste everybody's time, because that's honestly what's happening. I don't see a path to victory for him here. I guess maybe he can land something heavy on the feet, but I don't think this fight's going to play out on the feet very long. And I know Volkanovski historically has been very good at working back to his feet, popping up when he does get taken down. But there's a difference when guys at 145 pounds who aren't like the best grapplers on the UFC roster take you down. Yeah, you can pop back up. But when Islam Makhachev gets on top of you and consolidates position, I don't think he's going to be popping back to his feet like a spring chicken here. So I think Makhachev is going to be the much bigger fighter, the stronger fighter in those grappling exchanges. And I do think he gets the submission victory here in a very kind of anticlimactic way. So Makhachev by submission, that's the official pick. And as always, you could check out fightnumbers.com where I'll have DraftKings player rankings broken down by salary tier. I'll have ownership projections, a couple other things as well. It's all completely free. Check it out, fightnumbers.com. As always, thanks for watching. Best of luck, and we'll see you guys next time.